Long ago, in the vast and untamed lands of Wallachia, there was a prince named Vlad. He was no ordinary ruler, he was Vlad the Impaler, feared for his brutal methods in war and revered for his fierce protection of his people. His hands had spilled the blood of countless enemies, and his name had become synonymous with terror. But after many battles, Vlad found peace in his heart and home. He ruled over his people with fairness, living in harmony with his beloved wife, Marina, and their young son, Angeras. Vlad was content, determined to leave behind the horrors of his past and ensure that his son would grow up in a land free of violence. Yet, the calm was not to last. One day, dark news reached Vlad's castle. The Ottoman Empire, a force larger and more powerful than any Vlad had faced before, was on the march. Their leader, Sultan Mehmed II, had sent a message. He demanded a tribute, a cruel and unimaginable price. Mehmed required 1,000 boys from Vlad's kingdom to be taken away and trained as soldiers for the empire. They would be stripped from their homes, their families, and their childhoods, to serve as warriors for the Ottomans. Among them, Mehmed demanded Vlad's own son, Angeras. Vlad was no stranger to this kind of cruelty. He had once been a boy taken by the Ottomans, trained to be a killer in their army. But he had fought his way back, reclaimed his homeland, and now vowed that his son would never suffer the same fate. Defying the Sultan would mean war against an army far greater than Vlad's. He knew his forces could not withstand such power. Desperate and unwilling to sacrifice the future of his people or his son, Vlad sought a solution that no mortal man had dared to consider. Legends told of a creature living high in the mountains, a creature with dark and terrible powers. With no other option, Vlad ventured to Broken Tooth Mountain, a jagged, foreboding peak that loomed over his kingdom. It was said that no man who entered its dark caverns ever returned. But Vlad was no ordinary man. Deep within the mountain, Vlad found what he sought, a creature, neither living nor dead, bound by ancient magic. This creature was a vampire, an immortal being cursed to live in the shadows, feeding on the blood of the living. The vampire was old, his eyes filled with centuries of hatred and suffering. He had the power Vlad needed, but it came with a price. The vampire offered Vlad a dark pact. He would give Vlad his power, the strength of 100 men, the speed of a storm, and the ability to control the forces of nature itself. For 3 days, Vlad would possess this power, enough to crush his enemies. But if, during those 3 days, Vlad drank human blood, the curse would become permanent. He would become a vampire forever, doomed to eternal darkness and an unquenchable thirst for blood. If he resisted, he would return to his human form. Vlad, driven by his love for his family and the desperation of his situation, accepted the offer. When Vlad returned to his people, something had changed. His senses were heightened, could hear the faintest whisper from miles away, and he could feel the life pulsing in the hearts of those around him. His strength was beyond anything he had known, and his speed was unmatched. But with this power came a terrible hunger, a thirst for human blood that gnawed at him relentlessly. Vlad hid his transformation from his wife and son. He fought to control the curse, knowing that he could not give in to the temptation, no matter how strong it became. The first test of his new powers came swiftly. The Ottomans sent an advance party, a scouting force, to test the defenses of Wallachia. Alone, Vlad faced them, and with a single sweep of his hand, he unleashed a swarm of bats, tearing through the enemy forces like a storm. His enemies fell before him, powerless to stop the fury of the vampire prince. Word spread quickly of Vlad's newfound strength. His people were in awe, believing that their prince had been blessed by the gods. But as the Ottoman army approached, Vlad's curse began to take its toll. The thirst for blood became stronger with each passing hour, and his control over the darkness within him began to waver. Marina, ever perceptive, sensed the change in her husband. He was distant, his eyes shadowed by something she could not understand. But she trusted him, believing that he would protect them all. The full might of the Ottoman Empire arrived at Vlad's doorstep. Mehmed II, confident in his army's strength, prepared to crush Wallachia and take what he believed was his. But Vlad, now embracing his dark powers, had a plan. He could no longer rely on his mortal army. Instead, he called upon the darkness within him, and in a moment of desperation, he turned a small group of his men into vampires. They became his Dark Legion, bound to him, with the same unholy powers that he now wielded. Together, they unleashed hell upon the Ottomans. The battlefield became a nightmare as Vlad's vampire army tore through the enemy ranks. The Ottomans were no match for the speed, strength, and fury of the vampires. But with each victory, Vlad felt himself slipping further from humanity. His thirst for blood was becoming uncontrollable, and the more he embraced his powers, the more he realized he was losing his soul. In the midst of battle, Mehmed, knowing Vlad's weakness, kidnapped Angeras, forcing a final confrontation between the Sultan and the vampire prince. Mehmed was prepared, using silver, a substance known to weaken vampires. Despite his strength, Vlad struggled against Mehmed's attacks. The Sultan taunted Vlad, telling him that no matter how powerful he became, he would always be a slave to the darkness. In a final act of desperation, Vlad called upon the last of his strength. With a surge of power, he defeated Mehmed and rescued his son. But the victory came at a terrible cost. During the chaos of battle, Mirena had been fatally wounded. As she lay dying, she begged Vlad to drink her blood to take her life so that he could live on with the strength to protect their son. With tears in his eyes and a broken heart, Vlad did as she asked. With that final act, Vlad sealed his fate. He was no longer a man. He had become Dracula, the mortal vampire, cursed to walk the earth for eternity, bound by the darkness he had embraced to save his family and kingdom. Vlad sent Angeras away to be raised by monks, ensuring that his son would grow up free of the curse that had claimed him. Alone, Dracula watched as the world moved on without him. Centuries passed, and the legend of Dracula became a story of fear and horror, told around campfires and written in books. But Dracula remained, lurking in the shadows, waiting. In modern-day London, a city far removed from the ancient lands of Wallachia, Vlad Tepes, now living under a new identity, saw a woman walking through the streets. Her face was strikingly familiar, she looked just like Mirena. Her name was Mina. Intrigued, Vlad approached her, drawn to her as if the centuries between them had never existed. As they walked together, an ancient figure watched from the shadows, the same vampire who had given Vlad his powers all those years ago. With a sly smile, the ancient vampire whispered, "Let the games begin." And so, the story of Dracula, once a man who sacrificed everything for his family, now cursed to eternal darkness, continued as legend reborn for a new age.